So during an interview with Fox News earlier today, President Trump basically came out and confirmed that the police killing of, I believe his name was Michael Reinhold, an anti-fascist who claimed that he shot this person in the Portland, Oregon area, was in self-defense, and Trump saying the cops murdering Michael Reinhold was an act of retribution. So this is some truth out. I'll link this down below. Discussing the recent police killing of a self-described anti-fascist suspected of fatally shooting a far-right activist in Portland, Oregon, President Donald Trump openly endorsed extrajudicial executions in a Fox News interview Saturday, declaring that there has to be retribution. Again, that's just Trump completely mask off, supporting the extrajudicial killing of Michael Reinhold, this anti-fascist, this BLM supporter who claims that he was acting in self-defense when he shot this far-right activist in Portland. This is Trump. I put out, when are you going to get him? And the U.S. Marshals went in to get him, the president told Fox News host Janine Pirro, referring to Michael Forrest Reinhold. This guy was a violent criminal, and the U.S. Marshals killed him. And I tell you something, that's the way it has to be. There has to be retribution. I mean, again, it's very, very telling, but not surprising how Trump and the right wing react to people like Kyle Rittenhouse, who murdered multiple people in cold blood because he was this right-wing fanatic, this Trump supporter, this outside agitator who came in from state lines, possessed that gun illegally, and crickets or outright support for him. But then you have Trump coming out and saying, that he was in support of this extrajudicial assassination of this anti-fascist, this BLM supporter, Michael Reinhold. I mean, it's pretty disgusting. And then we have even more backstory to this. Trump's comments came days after an ordained minister who lives in an apartment complex near where Reinhold was shot and killed by members of the law enforcement task force earlier this month in Lacey, Washington, said it was not clear at all that Reinhold was armed and police gunned him down. And in fact, this witness, who has now hired a lawyer and is, fearful for himself and his family, said Reinhold had like gummy bears and a cell phone in his hand when cops shot him multiple times, no type of warning, no type of identification or anything before opening fire and extrajudicially assassinated him. Reinhold was clutching his cell phone and eating a gummy worm as he walked to his car. That's when officers opened fire without first announcing themselves or trying to arrest him. The witness account contradicts the law enforcement narrative that Reinhold produced a firearm when officers attempted to arrest him. And here we go. In a Vice News interview before he was killed by police, Reinhold said he was acting in self-defense late last month when he fatally shot Aaron Danielson, a member of the far-right group Patriot Prayer. And here is Trump in his own words.
When is that change?
That's kind of loud.
Cross the Rubicon?
Well, in Kenosha, they asked men.
Right.
And we did a job like nobody's ever seen before.
But if they don't ask you in, there
Then you're
are
not allowed to
American
do it
people who
unless you do insurrection, in which case it's just not big enough for insurrection.
You won't do insurrection before
You
election.
don't need it. You don't know.
Not yet.
Oh, I'd be willing to do it in a heartbeat if you needed it, but we don't need it. Our National
When do you
Guard.
need it?
Our National Guard is so good and so tough.
But they've
And
got
by
to
the way,
last.
police departments in places that we're talking about, Seattle, we were going into Seattle, and they solved the problem the night before we got there. We were getting ready to go. They heard we were going
Did
in.
you hear Ted Wheeler's numbers? Like 20%.
Alright, maybe that's not one. So that, I don't know, just Trump talking about his fascist goons going in across these different cities. Again, defund the police, defund military-industrial complex as well.
Wheeler's a disaster. He's a laughingstock. He went out to protest.
I mean, I agree. Ted Wheeler is a disaster because he's been running cover for the Portland Police Bureau during the entirety of these protests, where they have been brutalizing protesters, tear gassing them, brutalizing communities of color all throughout the Portland, Oregon area, all throughout their existence. And Trump's obviously going to take a different route with it, saying he's not being tough enough on the protesters.
So-called agitators, and they were going to destroy him. They were going to beat him up badly.
Again, the cops are the outside agitators. Literally, a vast majority of cops don't actually live in the cities that they police. The cops are the outside agitators. The cops are the ones starting the riots, not the protesters.
Actually had security, but they were going to beat him up badly. The man is a disaster. If he would say, come into Portland, within a half an hour, the whole thing would be
But he's
solved.
not going to say that.
The governor's gotten closer. Look what's going on.
Governor's trash too. Kate Brown, she's trash.
I spoke to the governor 2 days ago. They're arresting a lot of people. Now, we sent in the U.S. Marshals for the killer, the man that killed the young man in the street. Just shot him. I mean, it was on television. Just cold-blooded killed him. He didn't like his hat, or he didn't like something, and it wasn't a Trump hat.
Right. It was peaceful.
It was
prayer.
It was a lot. It was a religious hat.
Right.
Patriot prayer, I think, right?
Cold blood. 2.5 days went by, and I put out, when are you going to go get him? And the U.S. Marshals went in to get him. And in a short period of time, they ended in a gunfight. This guy was a violent criminal, and the U.S. Marshals killed him. And I will tell you something, that's the way it has to be. There has to be retribution when you have crime.
God damn, I mean, just think about how disgusting that is. President of the United States, Trump, little baby fascist Trump, coming out in support of extrajudicial killings of U.S. citizens without any type of trial, no due process, nothing like that.
There can't be guys standing up that want to fight. They want to fight. You can't throw bricks at people with shields.
But the problem, Mr. President, you and I both agree. The problem is there are now prosecutors who are not...
Oh, Jesus. All right. That's Trump. That's Trump. State violence to advance the end of retribution is death squad logic. That's literally what happened. Senator Brian Schatz, Hawaii, noted the extrajudicial killings are something many Republican U.S. senators oppose that they happen outside the United States, but they won't say anything about this. Every single member of the Senate who talks about the rule of law needs to speak up or forever hold their peace. But I would like to point out the extrajudicial killings of U.S. citizens at the behest of the president is nothing new. It's just never been quite as mask off as it is with Trump in this example, and not happening on American soil. So here we go. Obama killed a 16-year-old American in Yemen. Trump just killed his 8-year-old sister. It's from Glenn Greenwald, The Intercept, back in 2017. 2010, Obama directed the CIA to assassinate an American citizen in Yemen, Anwar al-Awlaki, despite the fact they'd never been charged with, let alone convicted of any crime, and the agency successfully carried out the order a year later with a September 2011 drone strike. While that assassination created widespread debate, the once again beloved ACLU sued Obama to restrain him from the assassination on the ground of due process, and then, when that suit was dismissed, sued Obama again after the killing was carried out. 2 weeks after the killing of al-Awlaki, a separate CIA drone strike in Yemen killed his 16-year-old American-born son, Abdul Rahman, along with the boy's 17-year-old cousin and several other innocent Yemenis. The U.S. eventually claimed that the boy was not their target, but merely collateral damage. So again, just an example that these extrajudicial killings of American citizens, but just, let's be frank, people abroad in general by the U.S. empire, these various military branches has been going on, and Trump is just mask off supporting that for U.S. citizens being extrajudicially assassinated, murdered by the security state in the U.S. now. So that's really the only difference. And again, it's very alarming and disturbing, but this has been happening to U.S. citizens both under Obama and now Trump abroad. So it's just, again, our kind of disgusting foreign policy coming home to roost in a sense.